get into that, I do want to mention that we have already launched our pre-holiday sale for Peace Warriors Martial Arts. So make sure you check our Facebook group, our Facebook page, your email, the PWNA Teammate app, or find one of the black signs around the studio with a QR code on it. Scan that, and you can see what we have for sale. We've got these beanies for $17.99 plus tax. We've got 3 different sets, level sets of sparring gear, discounted 10% off, or individual sparring gear pieces, 10% off. We have uniforms 10% off. We have a deal where you get a free base set of Century sparring gear for 3 months tuition paid up front. We have $100 gift cards to us for $80 each, all kinds of stuff. Make sure you check that out. And there's a special event you can register ahead of time for if you know where you're looking and know what you're looking for. But now to our Teammate Talks podcast of the day. It's been a while since we did an episode on mental health. So I wanted to get into an episode related to mental health. I used to talk on this subject a lot. This is something I've struggled with for most of my life. For example, I have a few different diagnoses, but for example, my main one is manic depressive bipolar disorder, which also can lead to me having OCD tendencies, especially related to problem solving, stressors, and work. And that can be tough, not just for me to deal with, but for the people around me, such as my staff or my wife, my son, things like that. And it can be tough to live with somebody who you love who struggles with something mental health related, even if it's just generalized anxiety disorder or depressive issues or focus issues, whatever that might be. There's lots of different flavors that these kinds of things come in, right? And something that we do at my martial arts studio, we have put a lot over the years into buddying up with psychologists, behavioral therapists, occupational therapists, and the like, to learn about the best practices of how to handle kids with attention disorders or people with bipolar disorder or people with OCD tendencies or people with PTSD or people with trauma-based mental health disorders, because these are things I've suffered with for pretty much my entire life. Matter of fact, we thought for many years that I just had severe depressive episodes and an extreme anxiety because I was having panic attacks multiple times a day over nothing. Come to find out years and years later, because here's the thing, if someone has bipolar disorder like mine, it usually takes about 10 years to get diagnosed properly, because they want to tell you you got anxiety at first. They want to tell you you got depression. They put you on all those meds. Those meds don't work. And then you're like, oh man, something's wrong with me. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Before you find the right person who's go, that sounds a lot like bipolar. Let's try that, right? And that's how that kind of goes down, right? But that's not what I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about what it's like to struggle with mental health disorders. What's up, Neil? What I want to talk about is what it's like to live with somebody who struggles with mental health disorders, which is why I have her with me today and didn't do this episode on my own. I'm doing well, Neil. It's good to see you. I hope you're having a great weekend. So, first thing I want to bring up about living with somebody with mental health struggles is that you have to understand that your partner's mood is not your responsibility. Your partner's mood is not your responsibility. So, for example, I get it, the way we do marriage vows and stuff, like there's certain things, this whole idea that your partner's happiness or your partner's contentment or your partner's satisfaction is your responsibility. And that, especially when we talk about someone with mental health struggles, that is a really kind of toxic way to yourself, self-toxic way to look at it. Because fact of the matter is I might fall into a depressive episode that I can't do anything about. And if I can't do anything about it, what makes her think that anything she does is supposed to have an impact? But what happens is maybe I get depressed. Maybe she knows it. She tries to be there for me. But let's say her whole focus is on trying to get me to feel better, trying to get me to come out of my slump. Well, then if I can't come out of my slump, then she starts saying, what's wrong with me? Why am I not good enough? Why did I not, why am I not enough to make my husband happy, right?
You're like saying my mantra or like all of my negative thoughts
right.
for like 6 years.
Because look, man, it's like everybody goes through this. And fact of the matter is I can tell that she's going out of her way to improve my mood. And I want what she's doing to improve my mood. And I want to improve my mood based on what she's doing so that she knows she's having a positive impact and doing the right things. But mental health struggles are different, right? Like, there may not be anything that's going to pull me out of that mood. I can get up and walk around. She can distract me from that mood a little bit. But depending on how locked into it I am, there may be nothing that's going to pull me out of that mood right that second. The best she can do is maybe distract me from it. Or what I tell people when they ask for advice on this is I say, stop trying to make your partner feel better through your love and instead love them despite the way they feel, right? So if I'm, oh, thank you, Neil. That's awesome. Good to see you, Hassan. So if I hope I pronounced that right, my bad. But if I am in a depressive episode or a manic episode or whatever, and I can tell that she's trying to cheer me up, it's a struggle to get out of that episode, because if I can tell she's trying to cheer me up, I start to feel guilty if I don't cheer up. If I can't cheer up, I feel guilty. She feels like she's doing something wrong. In the end, it's not that she shouldn't act the way she is or maybe try to distract me or whatever. It's that she needs to recognize that how I feel is not her fault or necessarily her responsibility. I mean, there might be times, there may be a trigger issue or something, and we can discuss that, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is I just seem to be in depression for no real reason. She's trying to cheer me up out of it. That can make me feel guilty if I'm not able to cheer myself out of it, which can lock me into a deeper depression. Meanwhile, she starts feeling bad about herself because she's not able to help me out of my depression. So instead of her doing these things to try to help me out of my depression, the more helpful thing is for her to say, well, I'm not doing these things to improve his mood. I'm doing these things to show my husband that I love him regardless of the fact that he's depressed, regardless of the fact that he's not able to do things right now. And this is also true for people who struggle with anxiety, for people with those kind of things. Of course, if your partner struggles with anxiety and you think you should be able to fix that anxiety, you're going to start feeling like you're no good. Your partner's going to feel, more anxious and more guilty because they know you're trying, but it's not really helping. So instead, do those supportive things like trying to help them calm down from the anxiety, trying to help their heart rate go down. Hugs help. Cuddling helps sometimes, not always. Different people have different things. I'm just saying, whatever it is you do to help, don't stop doing that. Just stop doing it with the intent of thinking it's going to pull them out of that mood. Instead, do it as I love you even though you're anxious. I love you even though you're panicking right now. I love you even though you're depressed right now. So at this point, do you have anything to add to the discussion?
Yeah, and I think the thing that probably helps the most is understanding that you're probably not going to pull them out of the anxiety or the depression.
And even if you
whatever.
Even if you do, it's not going to happen instantly. It's something that takes a while before it kicks in.
And that's simply because those things are chemical imbalances inside the brain and body.
Well, and let me explain what it's like to have that imbalance. What it's like to have that imbalance is you start feeling anxious, you're not really sure why. So your brain starts thinking of all the things you have to be anxious about, which cause you to feel panicky and guilty about things you could have done better, right? That's what it's like to have that chemical imbalance. So then if you start feeling like, oh, I should be thinking about something else, or I've got to get myself out of this slump, it locks you deeper into the anxious thoughts. So I just wanted to give the other side of that before you went on.
Yeah. So really, it's better to stick with things that you would maybe just normally do to show them that you appreciate them and that you still care, because
they need that. They do need to feel like you care, like you're not just ignoring them when they're depressed.
Now, sometimes that can get a little wonky. You might have to modify that because, like, if someone's really anxious, getting touched could create,
more
it's
anxiety.
Like when you feel touched out, it's like, imagine that is like what anxiety feels like.
Something that high-level anxiety disorders almost always come with is sensory disorders. Almost always come with overstimulation problems, physical overstimulation. So someone who deals with anxiety all the time will not be able to handle physical contact that much, especially when they're feeling really, really anxious. And it's not that, so if you have somebody that's anxiety and you always just want to give them a hug and they always like, tense up or push away a little bit, and then you get offended, well, they feel guilty because they offended you, but it's not because they didn't want the hug. It's that the hug was so overstimulating that their brain and body can't handle it.
And the thing is quite honestly, we should be asking anyway.
Not every time, but yeah.
No, but I don't just walk up to you and hug you.
Sometimes you'll say, is it okay?
Yeah.
Are you in a good spot for a hug? Yeah, and I appreciate that.
Well, and I don't want to like go to hug you and then you like
pull away.
That makes me feel bad.
Look, and this is something. Let's be honest with the audience here. This is something we struggled with in our marriage for a very, very long time.
Honestly, it's still for me because I am touchy-feely.
Yeah.
It is still a struggle with me where I like look at you and I'm like, today's not the day, but I really want to hug, and so I'll just like walk by and I just like hand and just like, here, I love you, and then I'm like, out.
Well, and I will give hugs during that time if you express to me that's something you really need. but at the same time, it's not going to be as loving a hug as you would want. And I'm
Yeah.
aware of that. At the same time, even someone with anxiety and depressive disorders, if you expressed, hey, I need a hug, even if they can't handle being touched, they might be okay with giving you a hug if you don't hug them back. So for example, I might not be able to handle in an manic anxious episode her grabbing and hugging me, but if she says, I really need a hug, I can handle hugging her with her just lightly going around without her actively hugging me. I can handle that, right?
Yeah.
Because it lets me feel like I'm being there. But that's me. That's not everybody with anxiety. Everybody's going to have different things, you know.
Yeah. But I mean, and two, you've got to feel the room, right?
Read the room, yeah.
We have been together for almost 20 years, and I can walk in a room with him and not even see him and be like, oh, okay, this is where we're at. And so I already kind of know what, in a roundabout way. I obviously need to talk to him. I need to see him. But I have an idea of where we're at in anxiety or depression or hey,
lack
we
of
had a
focus.
or lack of focus, or hey, we had a really good day today and like everything's
Or
fine.
too much hyper focus.
Yeah, and so, but you got to read the room too.
Or she
and-
catches me all the time deep in depressive thoughts or trying to dig myself out of depressive thoughts, and I tend to have the same look on my face every time, and she'll walk up and touch me, and I'll look up towards her and she'll just go, okay, yeah. But you have to understand that it's like, and because my situation not as anxiety or generalized depressive disorder, mine is manic depressive disorder. And I don't know if you guys know what manic depressive actually means, but that means that you are not only depressed, but energetic about it. Over the top, energetic about your depression, which means your brain doesn't stop. You're constantly digging through all the things that make you sad and upset and hate yourself. You can't stop your brain from doing it no matter how much you try. And you're also physically energetic at the same time. Like manic depressive is very, very difficult for someone to live with or for someone else to deal with, because she'll see that I am very, very depressed, and yet I'm all over the place, running around doing this, doing that, getting more angry because everything I do badly because I can't get my brain off this crap that I feel bad about. So I'm not even doing the laundry right, and I'm not even doing the dishes right, and then I have ADHD on top of that. So I start putting dishes away, get 3 cups put away, and then
another thought and go scroll.
and then now I'm over there, like
really
cleaning the
adjusting
couch
something.
upholstery or moving things around, and then I start readjusting the bookshelves, and the whole time I'm depressed, right?
And then angry, realizing that the dishes aren't.
And I get
finished.
more and more angry at myself for not finishing anything I start. So then I sit down and go, fine, I won't do anything. And then I sit there just shaking, right, or bouncing my leg or
With
drumming on
18
myself.
half-finished projects that I get to come around
Yeah.
trying to finish.
Yeah, right.
You know, so it's fine.
Yeah, so
because
man-
by then
yeah.
I'm also anxious, and I'm like, I just need to finish everything.
It's an oversimplification, but manic depressive is like being energetically depressed.
And it's funny when it's not happening. When it's happening, it's chaos.
Yeah, it's
and then
absolutely
there's the moments
chaotic.
where you're manic and not depressed.
Manic and not depressed,
and
but
then
that
you become OCD.
but manic
and
and not
that's
depressed
fun.
turns into OCD, and that always turns into feeling guilty, which leads to me feeling
Depression.
anxious. Because when I'm manic and not depressed, I'm happy, I'm in a good mood, I'm joking around, I'm saying things, and then I kind of go stop and be like, oh, did I go too far with that? Because that's something manic. That's kind of a thing about manic behaviors. Manic behaviors are essentially impulsive things that have gone too far. So the reason people with bipolar or manic bipolar suffer with impulsive spending, impulsive gambling, addictive behaviors, overly sexual drive, things like that, those are very common with manic type bipolar disorders, because when you're manic you feel good, and then the manic part is that you don't just feel good, you end up taking that feeling too far, saying too much, doing too much, impulsively doing too much, and then within a few hours of that, you're going to start thinking about those things you said and did and go, oh, did I go too far? Was I too insulting? Was this? Was that? And the manic part almost always leads to a depressive episode. That's what creates the bipolar swings, is they get manic, they feel good, then they recognize, oh no, I spent all my money. Oh no, I went over the top. And then that builds to a sad depression of, why can't I control myself? Why did I do all those things? Why did I anger all those people? Why did I have to do that? And then that depressive episode turns into anxiety, and then the anxiety feeds back to mania, and then the mania leads back to depression. This is the classic bipolar curve, right?
And it's like a circle that curves.
Now look, most people with bipolar disorder, they go through these phases across 2 to 3 month time frames. People with bad bipolar disorder will cycle like this once or twice a month. And then there's those like me who have something known as rapid cycling type whatever bipolar, which means that these swings can happen multiple times in a week or multiple times in a day. Even medicated, I have it happen multiple times in a month, and I'm on good meds for it. But it's a lot better than the 5 times a day where I've been depressed for 5 hours of the day off and on, manic for 5 hours of the day off and on, anxious, which is part of mania, anxiety is part of mania, off and on, right? It gets wild. It gets crazy to deal with, but not just for the person. I don't want to just talk about the experience of the person dealing with it. The main reason of this episode is I wanted to talk about what it's like to live with somebody who has it. And the thing is you have to understand that them having these disorders is not an excuse for them to try not to manage and cope and work on their coping skills and things like that. But understand that people with true issues with these disorders can put all the work possible into building coping skills, building coping mechanisms, and still fall short every time. And that's when you know that someone needs medication. But remember, medication doesn't fix it. That's why coupled with medication, especially with things like bipolar and schizophrenia, are supposed to be therapy. The only reason that I get away with doing medication and not therapy is because I self-therapy. I for 10 years unmedicated, I constantly studied and tried to practice and institute good philosophies, good positive thinking, good cognitive behavioral therapy. I would do these practices myself, and I still do them, but it still wasn't enough until I got medicated. Then when I got medicated, suddenly all those coping skills I was practicing suddenly started working. Imagine that, right? It worked when I was medicated. So I'm not saying that the person with these disorders doesn't have a certain responsibility to at least attempt to build coping skills, but it does still require a lot of patience and understanding. If you want to be with somebody that has those mental health disorders, you have to not take things too personally. You have to have a certain amount of patience and understanding, and understand that even if they're medicated, they might need therapy, or even if they're in therapy, they might need medications, or even if they have healthy coping skills, that might not be enough to stop them from going off the rails from time to time. And you just have to be aware of those things are going to happen. And when those things do happen and the person goes off, the best you can do is be supportive, and instead of trying to change their mood, love them anyway. Show them love even if they're yelling and upset and frustrated and angry. Show them love anyway. Be like, look, I know you're mad at me right now, and I know that your mental health struggles have kind of taken over, and that there's something I did, something you've latched onto that you've taken offense to, but I still love you, and I love you even though you're mad about this. And maybe when we're done being mad about it, maybe when you get to a better spot, we can have a healthy conversation about it, right? Like, that's one way you can approach it. And be like, look, I understand why you're yelling. I understand why you're angry. Maybe I did accidentally step on one of your triggers, and I'm very sorry for that, but I love you anyway. And maybe we can just separate for a little while until you calm down. And then I'm happy to have that conversation with you when you're ready to tell me exactly how or why what I did affected you, right? Because if you live with someone with a mental health struggle, you are going to step on their triggers. You're going to. There's no way around it. It's going to happen, right?
And the thing, too, is it might not have been about you stepping on the trigger.
That might have just been the straw that broke the camel's back. There could have been a lot of other stuff first.
Something that they were thinking about from the past.
Yeah.
Because anxiety doesn't just happen about right now. Anxiety will crop up from something that happened in the past.
Yeah.
Maybe there was a car that drove by that was like their great auntie's car, and she was super abusive or something.
That's the thing about it.
Anxiety's running in the back of the mind, and so you just start chewing chips.
Yeah.
And now that sound created a thing, and now it's a thing. And
right. But if you find yourself triggered by something, it is technically on you to try to communicate that, cope with it, communicate about it, and maybe come up with some sort of compromise on it. But if you've ever seen those memes, going back to what she was saying about, being tired all day and ready to sleep at 1 o'clock, then lay down at midnight and be thinking about the most embarrassing things that happened when I was in 3rd grade and feeling guilty. That is anxiety disorder. Anxiety disorder will cause you to relive the most anxious moments in your life over and over and over again, no matter how many times you philosophize your way out of them, no matter how many coping skills you build towards them. The thing is when you get tired enough, your brain's walls and coping skills, no matter how good they are, they go down, they disappear. The closer you are to falling asleep, the more likely that is to happen. which is why most people with anxiety disorders will tell you it's very difficult to fall asleep, because they'll start to fall asleep and then right as they're dozing off, bam, they get hit with some anxious thought from 4th grade or whatever, right? That is because as you go to sleep, your coping skills slowly drop down. And that's why it's hard for anxiety people to fall asleep, because as they fall asleep, their coping skills drop down, and then all of a sudden that leaves their anxiety an opening to come in. So if you experience something like that, you might want to speak to a doctor, a psychiatrist, or a psychologist about it, because that is a big sign of generalized anxiety disorder and or PTSD, depending on what goes on. But back to my point, you're occasionally going to step on somebody's triggers if you live with them. Of course, you should try to learn their triggers, try to respect them, try to do the best you can, but you're going to step on them from time to time too. And the best you can do is go, I understand I stepped on your trigger. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to do that. We can talk about how to fix that moving forward, but I can see that it's got you really anxious, which has got you angry and yelling. So let's break this off for a little bit. And when you have kind of come to terms with your emotions, then we can come together and I'll apologize more sincerely and we will discuss what we can do moving forward, right? But it's still going to happen from time to time. Just don't take it too personally. Like, you have to not take it too personally. Now, here's where it becomes a problem. If someone with a mental health struggle, so say this happens. Say she says something that reminds me of an abuse thing, and then I get defensive and I get angry about it, right? And then I try to tell her later, hey, I'm sorry, this thing that you said reminds me a lot of this thing that happened, or this person that used to beat me, or whatever it is, and it led me to feeling like I would be physically attacked. And so I got defensive and I got angry and started trying to intimidate back. And it's not because she tried to hurt me or intimidate me, but the trigger that she stepped on by saying something a certain way, by doing something a certain way, brought me back to some abuser in the past who used to say something similar or talk similarly. And now my body goes, oh crap, I'm going to get hit, right? And so now I've got to be the aggressor first. I feel like I got to be the aggressor first to avoid the physical abuse, right? This is a common trigger symptom, right? Now, if that happens once and I say, hey, I'm sorry, you have to understand that this person who used to beat me senseless with a whip used to say this exact thing to me. And so when you said that to me, it just took me back to that mindset of being the helpless little kid about to get my butt whooped or my head whooped or whatever due to this thing. Then I've expressed to you why I have that trigger. I apologize because I did that. I expressed to you why I had a trigger. Now, if you do the same thing and step on the same trigger a week later, and then 3 days after that, and then a week after that, understand that the person whose trigger you're stepping on is going to start to feel like you're doing it on purpose.
And honestly, you are at that point.
And honestly, you are at that point. I mean, we can be transparent about this now. We've moved past a lot of this, but me and her had to have this argument a few times about like the same trigger getting pushed repeatedly, and then, you know, her or me, because this went both ways, but her or me being like, look, you have to understand this is a trigger, and when you do that kind of thing, I can't help it. I can't stop the angry, intimidating, scared, anxious, whatever the reaction is. I can't stop the reaction to it, because every time you say something like that, I have flashbacks, like literal flashbacks to some crap in my past, and I can't take it. But then the thing is if I express that as a trigger and then she does the same thing next week and does the same thing the week after, it's going to start to feel personal. And the more personal it starts to feel, the worse my reactions become. And this is the other way around too. And look, she doesn't have any mental health diagnosis, because the thing is this can happen with normal, ordinary people too. Whereas I do something and she goes, hey, that bothers me. That's a trigger of mine. Would you please not do that for this reason? And then I do it again tomorrow, and I do it again next week, and I do it again after that. It starts to feel personal.
Yep.
You start to get more and more angry about it. And then that turns into, well, if you're going to do that to me, I'm going to do it to you. And then that turns into where you spend 1, 2, 3 years wondering why you guys can't get along anymore and keep clashing every time you're together. It's because there's so much resentment and animosity built up by the fact that one person or both people feel like the other person is actively and purposefully stepping on their triggers and ignoring their boundaries to get a reaction out of them, so that they can then turn around and complain and yell at said person for doing the wrong thing. But I will say this to my dying breath, and this isn't a men's issue or women's issue, but you see this a lot more in men's circles than you do in women's. I wish women would talk about it more as well, is the concept of knowing that somebody has a boundary, knowing that somebody has a trigger, and pushing that boundary and pushing that trigger and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it until they break and start yelling and screaming and become the aggressor, and then turning around to your friends and going, oh, he's so mean and toxic and abusive. Oh, she's so mean and toxic and abusive. Oh, blah, 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 blah. Look, maybe their anger reaction shouldn't have happened, but you have to ask your own, like, was it undeserved, or did you purposefully tweak that nerve or twist that knife over and over and over again until they finally lost it and reacted like that, just so you could turn around and point to how angry and abusive they are? Do you understand how much this happens? Like, this happens all the time in so many relationships, whether it involves mental health struggles or not. It happens a lot, and it's not just women that do it. Men, we need to understand we do this crap too. We're just as guilty about it, right? I know a lot of people in the men's circles want to say, well, women have a big tendency to do that. Sure, but men do too, right? Let's not act like we're high and mighty and don't do the same thing, right? Maybe we don't do it the same way, but we certainly do the same thing, right? So men might not be going to their friends talking about how bad so-and-so treats you, but we might poke the trigger and poke the trigger and poke the trigger, and then when you yell, we might gaslight you, or we might, hey, why do you got to be so angry? All I said was, right? And that's just as bad. Yeah. That's just as bad. Just saying it and doing it to get a rise out of somebody.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that it's always your fault. Maybe she says or done something and it triggers me and I lose it, and she might honestly not know why or what happened. And that's on me. That's on me. Yeah, that's on me to calm down and then later go to her and go, look, hey, I'm sorry. You said this. You did this. This is how my brain took it. This is why I reacted that way. And when I say these things, I'm saying them as I'm sorry, and I am apologizing. I'm not saying this to excuse my behavior. I'm saying this to explain my behavior. Because there is a difference between excusing your behavior and explaining your behavior, right? So I'm doing it to explain the behavior so that you understand why pushing a trigger like that in me is difficult for me to control my reaction to. Yeah. But I see this kind of crap online all the time, right? Poke and poke and poke and poke at somebody and push all their triggers so that you can record them when they finally snap and yell at you, right? That's crap. That's crap, right? Like, I get abusive behaviors. I get that, right? And those are bad, and you should get away from those. You should certainly stand your ground there, right? Absolutely. But when you sit there and I'll just do it from the man's point of view. If you sit there and tell your husband, well, why are you so weak? I wish I had a stronger man. I wish I had a manlier man. Or you say jokes that emasculate your man, and you do this repeatedly, and then they go, hey, would you stop? I am a man. Would you stop talking to me like that? I deserve a little bit of respect. And then you turn around and go, oh, look, he's so abusive and yells at me. Oh, come on. You prodded them into that type of thing, right? So there's some back and forth with this. What?
I just feel like if we wouldn't let our kids talk to each other on the playground like that, we shouldn't be talking to each other like that as adults. I'm sorry, if you feel like your person does not fit what you need at this point in your life, and you've had a discussion about your goals for life and what you need, and your partner is not willing or able to meet those standards, you need to do something else instead of creating a toxic relationship.
Well, or some people create it just for the drama. It's not about ending the relationship. There's a lot of people do this as a power trip, right? So a lot of people, I see this a lot, right? And a lot of people will push the trigger to get somebody to react like that so that they can look out in public, dog whistling, like Tasha said, dog whistling, where you do a thing that triggers a reaction that no one else knows about, and then everybody notices the public reaction or gets recorded or something like that, right? That's dog whistling. So, but there are people that will do that, not because they want the relationship to end, but because they want to be able to hold something over their partner. So let's say she purposely pushes trigger, and then she records me when I lose my crap. That is so that she could go tell her friends and everybody she knows that I'm abusive and angry, turn people against me. So now she has leverage over me. She has control over me. A lot of people use this not because they want the relationship to end, but because they want to hold power and leverage in the relationship. And if you are in a relationship and you want to hold power and leverage over the other person, you don't need to be in that relationship. You should not be in that relationship, because that means you're in that relationship for selfish reasons. And every relationship there are some selfish reasons, but the selfish reasons should end with, this is somebody I want to build something with. And that's where that should end. That's where the selfishness should end right there, is that this is somebody I can see myself building something with. But if you feel like you need ammunition against your partner, or you feel like you need leverage against your partner, or you want to turn people against your partner so that they don't have any other options, that is a form of abuse in its own right. Maybe you didn't slap them, maybe you didn't hit them, maybe you didn't yell at them, but constantly triggering them until they have a reaction, and then using that reaction to alienate them from people. Guys, that's an abuse in its own right. You need to understand that. Now, this is something that happens a lot with people who live with people with mental health disorders. Because there are times where you live with someone with a mental health disorder, and that person tries to explain a trigger or tries to explain a situation, and then that just makes it easier for the other partner to keep pushing that trigger, and then call, like if she was pushing my trigger on purpose after I've said it's a trigger and set a boundary, and she keeps doing it in order to get that reaction out of me, right? I forgot where I was going with that statement, but
it's a problem.
It's a problem, right? And that is sort of a form of abuse in its own right. And neither one of us needs to be in that relationship at that point. Or if we really want to have the relationship, then we need to find a point where we go, look, all this crap, all this animosity, all this resentment in the past needs to disappear today. From this day forward, nothing from before this day can get brought up or used in these arguments type thing, right? But there's a lot of people that will do that against a partner who has mental health struggles so that they can call that person crazy, so that they can hold power over that person. So if she triggers, and then gets the reaction, and then she uses that to be able to say, oh, see, you're crazy, but you have bipolar, you have all this, and all that is causing you to be abusive. And if you stay in that relationship because you're just doing that to hold power over somebody so that you can control their actions or show that they're crazy and abusive or whatever anytime that you want, then gosh, you're going about this the wrong way. And there are people in actual abusive relationships who need to be heard and need to be believed. But people doing what we're talking about right here ruin it for the people who are actually in abusive relationships who need to speak out. Because if you do the kind of thing we're talking about and then start yelling abuse, and then the other side of the story comes out and the whole thing gets muddled in the public eye, then what happens when someone truly being abused steps forward and there's a, well, I don't know, there could be two sides to that, and no one believes them.
Yeah. And like the thing is and I'll just be honest, since we're pretty much having a fairly honest conversation. Those 10 years that there was no diagnosis that led to rapid cycling, I didn't come out of that unscathed.
Neither of us did.
Neither of us did. And our relationship didn't come out of it unscathed, right? I've been to therapy. I have seen a therapist for me, right? For me to talk about and go, and she was honest with me. She was like, okay, girlfriend, like, you can make a decision to let this stuff go. Are you going to let these things bother you, even though it's 3-4 years in the past and things are different now? Are you going to mentally perceive those things as different? If you're not going to, then you need to go. If you're going to hang on to them and it's too much, you need to go. But if you value the relationship, if you value the time in, if you go, you know what, this won't be so much hard work, then you need to let those things go and decide that it's time to let them go and move forward, and know that neither one of you is now is going to try to do things to purposefully hurt the other.
Right.
Because you can get in that cycle where, you know, like,
oh, so-and-so hasn't helped me with the dishes all week, so I'm going to do this.
Yeah,
and then so-and-so hasn't, you know.
Or you can just see things, you can start perceiving things as slights even when they're not. And that will sabotage, that's you self-sabotaging the relationship.
Because and if both parties are doing it,
yeah,
goodness.
I can choose to see the love that he shows. I can choose to do that, or she can choose to
see every mistake I make as a reason why I'm not a good
Yeah.
person,
And
right?
I can choose to go.
Because everybody's going to have stuff like that. Like if we're
Yeah.
going to be honest about anybody that you know, you can point to anybody you know and think of good things about them and bad things about them,
Yeah.
right? It's all about what you choose to put your perception on, what you choose to focus on, and you can change that perception any given day, any given minute. Are you going to focus on the times that person is there for you, or are you only going to focus on the times that they messed up or did something that hurt you? And if that is the case, and this is what I want to end the video on, if that is the case, understand that nothing gets fixed unless both of you are ready to have an honest conversation.
Several conversations.
Several honest conversations. Because here's the thing. She might start feeling a lot of animosity to him. Well, he doesn't do this for me, and he doesn't do this for me, and he doesn't whatever, and he doesn't whatever, and I feel unfulfilled. But if she never expresses to me that she needs or wants those things to be fulfilled, how am I supposed to meet that obligation? And this goes both ways. So instead of being like, that person doesn't appreciate me anymore, they never do anything to appreciate me, never do this, never do that. How about you sit them down to an honest conversation and say, hey, I don't feel very appreciated, and here's 5 things that I need to feel appreciated. That goes a heck of a lot farther than just going, well, I don't feel appreciated, so I'm going to stop doing things for them. And then they're going to stop doing more things for me, and I'm going to stop doing more things for them. And that turns into, it goes from stopping doing things for each other to actively doing things against each other. That's what that turns into over time. It becomes a silent feud. Yeah. The only way out of this, and on top of that, the best way to live with someone who has a mental health disorder is open, clear communication of what is needed, what's wanted, what's expected, and what's desired. And an understanding that neither partner can fulfill all of that stuff ever. But what you do is you lay out all those things, and then you start looking for, are they at least attempting? Are they trying? Are they going out of their way just a little bit to try to meet me part of the way? Because if they are, then there's hope for that relationship, right? And if you're both doing it, you will get there. Now, does that mean that you can do this once across a month and everything's good for the next 30 years? Heck no. This is something you have to read it, because understand, the longer you're in a relationship, the more patterns form, the more, because we get comfortable, and we're creatures of routine. Humans are creatures, especially when you have bipolar disorder. When you have bipolar disorder, that's the thing everybody tells you, the therapist, the psychiatrist, everybody. You have to be strict about your routine, your sleep schedule, your medicine schedule, your food schedule, your workout schedule. You have to be strict about that routine. And so when you live with someone with bipolar disorder, you have to be a little understanding to the fact that they are almost incapable of spontaneity. Not that we're incapable, but understand that when someone with bipolar disorder does something spontaneous, that can very easily throw them into an episode. A manic episode, a depressive episode, a mixed episode. When someone with bipolar disorder has to do something spontaneously, it can very much throw off their mental health for the next 3 weeks, right? So it has to be something big or a big decision for a bipolar disorder to be able to do something spontaneously like that. Now, I'm not saying go out to eat spontaneously, little things like that. I'm saying like things that take a little bit of, that are bigger, things that involve a couple hours time or something like that, or a complete change of routine, or staying up later, or getting up earlier, or getting right. Those kind of things are very difficult. So my point is, lay out those things, but then don't just look for them to do all of those things. Look for them to trying to improve. And look at yourself too. You have to understand, you should not be throwing stones if you don't throw a bunch at yourself first, right? You have to look at your own behaviors and go, but am I mirroring the same thing they are doing, right? And if you find that you are mirroring the same thing you don't like your partner doing, then you're falling back into that rut, and it's time to have a conversation again. And it's time to go, hey, we've fallen back into a routine that doesn't work for both of us, so let's pick 1 or 2 things to try to bring back into our routine to fix these things. It doesn't happen once. It happens over consistency. Just like training martial arts, just like training physically, it takes consistent long-term effort, especially when you're dealing with someone with mental health disorder, because I know for a fact that there's several times, including recently, where I'll suddenly one day start to feel real anxious, and I'll go, I wonder why I feel anxious. And then I'll start to feel guilty. I go, I wonder why I feel guilty. And they're like, oh, it's been like 3 weeks since I've done one of the things she needs to feel appreciated. And I haven't done it in 3 weeks. I got caught up in the budgets, and I got caught up in the work, and I got caught up in the fact that we only see each other for like an hour a day. And I got caught up in all that and realized, oh crap, it's been 3 or 4 weeks, right? And that's what lets me know, okay, I need to do something today. And so what I do is when I notice that type of thing, I know she knows I do this. When I realize that I got back into a rut, she will suddenly get like a very loving text message from me. Because I always have this realization when you're not around, right? So then I'm like, okay, crap. And then but then she needs to decide if she's going to recognize that I'm making an effort or not, and if she's going to see whether that effort is good enough to give me some credit for or not, right?
And usually when I look at him, I'm like, there he is. He's back.
Yeah.
I got it. All right.
Got sidetracked, got a little stressed.
And I sit there for 2 or 3 weeks and I watch him do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, okay, well, we'll come back around eventually.
But understand, I had rapid cycling bipolar disorder. Now that I'm medicated, it's a much slower, less steep cycle, but the cycle's still there. But now those cycles are 3 to 6 weeks long. So I might fall into a rut for 6 weeks before I go, crap, I've been so busy thinking about all these things related to the business that I haven't done these things, right? And honestly, she has the same thing. She goes through periods where 3 or 4 weeks goes by and she hasn't done any of the things I talked about needing to. But the thing is we've both reached an understanding where we're not going to hold it against each other. Instead, when it gets bad enough, we're just going to go, hey, can we talk about this again? Before it turns into animosity.
The thing is that I'm touchy-feely and he's a talker.
Yeah.
We're completely opposite.
I'm talking and looking. Like talk, watching, being able to observe somebody, right? Like that's intimate to me. Being able to observe somebody, being able to talk to them about anything, right? For her, it's different.
Yeah, and the thing is he's not necessarily touchy-feely. So like, usually when he's touched out, I'm talked out.
Yeah.
Because I teach the 4 to 6 year olds.
Yeah.
So I'm talked out at the end of the day.
Yeah, so sometimes we get to the end of the day and we exchange a look that goes, neither one of us has the coping skills to.
It's like we end the day with a.
Yeah, we're just gonna
good
we're gonna agree that we did, and we'll come back to this on Sunday, And sometimes that happens. Sometimes we're both like, okay, we've had too much of the world to even deal with each other at the moment.
Yeah.
And that's okay because look, when you're talking about long term, like she said at the beginning of this video, we've been together nearly 20 years. When you talk in the long term, you do recognize that it's like, okay, well, we can do better on Sunday or whatever. But you should still wake up each and every day. And the first thing you should do is think of 3 or 4 things that you can do for your partner to make sure they feel seen. And then think that you haven't been doing lately. And then, choose to look for those things in your partner, because sometimes a small gesture was meant to mean a lot. You know what I mean? Sometimes a small gesture of just sitting with your hand on each other's shoulders or holding hands is meant to mean a lot. Now, we got a party about to come, so we're going to go ahead and jump off here. So think about those things as you get involved. Oh, I didn't even notice we had comments. Oh, they're all science comments. Well. Till we see you guys again, be the best teammates you can be, and be the best at being you. Now I got to hit all the X buttons.